I, I think that there is more that makes us the same and less that makes us different. And for me, I consider it a responsibility and also a privilege to be able to wear.
Sensei Tuari, thank you for coming. I'm sorry that we messed up the timings, but we're here. I drive really fast from the dojo, but we're here now. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. We jokingly said that I wanted to start with an apology to your students for having to cut the class short. And I hope you drove, I'm sure you drove home within the speed limit. So
Oh,
thank you
yes.
for that. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah, well, our dojo is only around the corner. It takes me 2 minutes to drive there, which is a very being in a good position and having a team that actually can do training themselves and they don't need me on every step. Very refreshing and
Mm.
very good position to be, especially in situations like this when I do the cock up. I've been following you for some time, and few things brought my attention, and one of them was that you had a problem with people about your appearance and being proud of your culture, which I
Mm.
have to say I had the pleasure to visit New Zealand, spend there 3 weeks before we got children, and we've been in a position to travel for such a long periods of time, and
Mhm.
I thought it was wonderful, and I don't really see how people can have anything against you promoting your culture and being proud of it. We all need to be proud of our cultures.
Yeah, yeah. I think that wherever we come from, I mean, sometimes, I mean, something as I guess as no pun intended, in your faces wearing traditional tamako, which is not a big thing here. I'm sure you probably saw it when you were in New Zealand, but I, I think that there is more that makes us the same and less that makes us different. And for
Mhm.
me, I consider it a responsibility and also a privilege to be able to wear the traditional face tattoos of our people. I even hesitate to call it tattoos, but I think that especially in the world in which we're living, you know, if we take time to sit down with someone, even people we don't agree with, I think we'll find something that makes us the same.
Mhm.
And I was recently, as you know, in the UK. Unfortunately, I got sick, so we didn't have an opportunity to meet in person. But I was really amazed. I think the UK seems to be a very cosmopolitan place, and that there were some people who might have reacted, and my partner who was walking behind me said some people were like, "Oh, look at that," but people were really positive, and most of the time, I think people didn't even react. And the same thing, incredibly, in Okinawa in Japan, people just are just people. People are just trying to get on with their lives and look after their kids and pay the rent and put food on the table. So it's a small thing, and yeah, some people have a problem, but I would say that if people have a problem with it, it becomes from a lack of understanding, and it also comes from a place where maybe there's something in their life that they need to address about feeling comfortable with people who don't think the way that they think, or look the way they look, or talk the way they talk.
Mm.
That's a long-winded answer to that question, Sensei.
But you know, being in New Zealand and being educated a little bit because I was as well oblivious that we are pronouncing pretty much every time wrong your culture, your trees, and
Yeah.
everything, you know,
Mm.
because if my understanding is, it's not Maori, it's Maori, right?
It's Māori, Māori. But I mean, like for me, I guess I always appreciate, like when I do karate, I try to pronounce it correctly. Not
Mhm.
not because I want to be more Japanese than Japanese or Okinawan than Okinawan, just because I think um, I just sort of think it's a respect thing. And I know for me, if I was trying to pronounce words probably in your native language, you would probably be scratching your head. But I think people appreciate that you try. And I
Yeah.
think when we sort of do things where we're not even going to try, we rob ourselves of an opportunity to learn something about other people, which could mean that we learn something about ourselves. So
Mm.
we're just doing our best.
Yeah. So how did you get involved with the martial arts? What's your origin story?
Well, my origin story. I come from a small planet called Krypton, originally. um, so um, I've always been involved in our indigenous martial arts, and we don't call it martial arts per se. Um, but when I was about when I had someone who was I had an uncle who was very influential in the sense that he was influential in my life. So I grew up in a family environment where there was a lot of drugs and alcohol and violence. And having someone who kind of acted as a mentor to me and would teach me um, karate or teach me judo and those sorts of things meant a lot. And it was the first thing that I kind of felt like I was really interested in. And my involvement really stems from when I was about 5 or 6. I missed my school bus to go home, and I was going to a Catholic school in which there were many Catholic nuns, and so they had to go and make all sorts of phone calls. And they said to me, "Go to the hall, go to the school hall, and wait, and we'll come and get you." And when I walked in, there was all these green mats, all these what tatami, which I didn't know that's what they were at the
Hmm.
time. And there was a gentleman with the thickest wrists I've ever seen, and tapes around the fingers, who was a judo sensei. And they were in there and they were doing their breakfalls at ukeme and doing their throws and warm-ups. And I just thought it was magical. I thought, what is this? Um, and I just remember being asked onto the mat, and I'm there in my little school uniform. And that was kind of really the start of it. And then, so I started training regularly around then, and in Kyokushinkai Karate and Judo. And then when I was about 10 or 11, one of my cousins was babysitting us. And I saw my first Bruce Lee movie, which was, I don't know, what was released in the UK as the one in which he goes to Rome. In New Zealand and Australia, it was called The Way of the Dragon.
Hmm.
Um, and I just remember that sequence where Bruce Lee is doing those side kicks on the pads and shooting people across the space, and him using nunchaku and just being amazing. And I just went, I'm going to be a 5'4" Chinese kung fu master. That's what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. And as you can see, that's exactly what I am. That's what I've become.
And you said you done Kyokushin. I didn't thought that you started in Kyokushin. And how did you end up in Goju-ryu?
Well, in New Zealand, we had a very influential instructor who was kind of one of the real doyens of karate in New Zealand. His name is Sensei John Jarvis, and he was also the representative for Kyokushin Kaikan here in New Zealand. And so, really, at that time, there were some smaller styles, but Kyokushin Kai was the largest style. And there was no Goju-ryu in New Zealand, as far as I knew. Um, and Sensei Jarvis was good friends with Don Drager.
Hmm.
And so, as many people were, and Don Drager, being the influential man that he was, made an introduction between Moriu Higuana and Sensei Jarvis. Sensei Jarvis then decided to become a member of Okinawan Goju-ryu, the IGKF. He came back to New Zealand, said, I'm going to become a part of Goju-ryu. There was a large split in the style. Many of the Udansha wanted to stay with Kyokushin, and many decided to make the change. It was a little bit of a contentious time, as I understand, but I was a little kid, so for me, I didn't really understand the change, because as far as I'm concerned, kick's a kick and a punch is a punch. And a lot of our Udansha of that generation, our senior sensei, had that Kyokushinkai background, so they kept a lot of the the habits, the positive habits, and a focus on kihon, on fitness, on conditioning. And, when you're a kid and you've got elastic bones and, you've got the lung capacity, of a panther, that's really good basic training. So we're really lucky. And I regard ourselves as being really lucky, my generation, in that we had the Kyokushin emphasis and influence of good, hard, robust training, but also the Goju-ryu focus on kata and bunkai and all those things, which, to be honest, like most of us when I was young, I was more interested in sparring.
Yeah.
And I became a bit of a convert to kata a little bit later.
So which branch of the Goju you are here now? Did you been in different branches or you stay in one? Because usually when I talk to people from Goju, they kind of drift between finding their own unique one.
Yeah, yeah. A friend of mine, Steve Sensei, who's the Shoshinkan, who's a Shoshinkan instructor, Goju instructor from Canada. He has a real nice way of putting it. He puts it as being what does he call it? I'm trying to remember the term. Oh my gosh. There's a term that he uses and it will come to me. But basically, I'm not going to say I'm a ronin or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But almost like
A free spirit.
so for me, I came up in the IGKF.
Mm-hmm.
My sensei left the IGKF in I want to say 1989, 1990. And because because he was such a positive relationship, a positive um, influence on my life, I wasn't really looking at following a style. I was really looking at, this was a great sensei. His name was Sensei Laurie Scott. And he was such a kind man and such a great karateka and such a positive influence on my life that I followed him.
Mm-hmm.
And for a number of years, he trained us. And because at the time, I think he was a sandan, when he left, he was due for his yondan, but he left the OGKF and went out on his own. And for a number of years, I can't remember how many years it was, he kind of did his own thing. And we just trained. It didn't change my training. I was still at a fairly kind of junior level. And then he rekindled a friendship with Tiro Chinen Sensei
Mm-hmm.
in the early 90s, and we became a part of his organization, Jundokan International.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were many happy years, and I had opportunities to train and visit Chinen Sensei in Spokane and Washington State, and had many mentors. One sensei in particular, who was a huge influence on me, as the OGKI chief instructor in Miami, is a gentleman called Armando Martinez Sensei, who's a fantastic human being, an incredible karateka, and he's also a big bald guy as well. So a great karateka. So I met many really good people. Chinen Sensei passed away in 2015, and I hadn't really been a member of any particular organization probably since, I want to say, maybe 2007. And so I've just been an independent. If there's such a thing as an independent, I just decided at a certain point that I was really interested in trying to go deeper into what I was doing. And I was looking for want of a better word, I'm not looking for sensei as I am looking for colleagues. And there are plenty of people that are way senior. I'm not saying that my karate is so advanced that I don't need sensei, but I think that oftentimes, I found for me that oftentimes the sort of personality politics kind of played into how, when people were in organizations, I mean, there's lots of advantages to being part of a large organization. You have huge training camps, there's lots of different sensei and takes, but for me, I guess I wanted to cultivate relationships with sensei that I respected on a one-to-one basis, and for better or for worse. And I guess I wanted to try and teach the kind of karate that I didn't learn in the way that I didn't learn it. And I just wanted to enjoy martial arts. I think I was lucky that Sensei Scott, right at the beginning, he was very good at, and he didn't mind if people would turn up to our dojo, whatever belt they were wearing. He didn't mind. He wasn't hung up on, right, when you come to our dojo, you have to put a white belt on, or he wasn't threatened by other people's styles of preference. And in fact, he kind of invited it. And I didn't know that that was a rare thing until I started training with other people. And so I really have enjoyed that. And I think that the martial arts landscape is changing. I think that, you know, the Okinawan and the Japanese masters are incredible masters. But I think, and I hope it's not contentious to say, or maybe it is, I think there are people that are just as good, if not better, that are developing the art that have never been taught Okinawa, Japan. Likewise, I think that if you have the opportunity to go and train in Okinawa and spend time there and train with the masters and be in the place where it started, I think you should take it. It just adds another dimension. But I think that we're in a time of transition. And I think that it's really important to embrace that and see things realistically, and to be able to kind of realize the ridiculousness of meeting someone and then doing things like, well, I want to do my karate like this particular person, and that person might be, you know, uh, 3 feet shorter than you. They might be, or 100 kilos heavier or whatever. You know, trying to emulate someone else's karate is a good thing, but trying to impersonate is a very difficult thing to do. And I think what comes along with it sometimes is you're expected to also adopt their biases. You're expected to, if Sensei doesn't like them, we don't like them. And I think it's a very dangerous place to be as a human being, and as a practitioner, it's very, very dangerous. And I think that we ultimately, when we adopt that way of thinking, I think that we don't do nothing but harm to ourselves and what we're trying to do in our students. And yeah, it's just a very unhealthy place to be. Sorry, Sensei, that was a long-winded
No, it's nice, it's nice.
answer.
So
Mm.
you said you teaching karate like you wanted to be taught, but you've never been. What are those changes? What did you change, and how you approach the teaching the karate now?
Well, I think that from a physical perspective, there are a lot of things. Like I give an example. Like I'm a big believer in hojondo in my
Mhm.
personal training. I like chishi, nigirigame, makiwara, all of those things. But I also like weight training. I
Mhm.
like kettlebells. I like calisthenics. I like stretching. I like core work. So the idea that I'm going to put, um, 40 kilo um, barbell across my shoulders and bunny hop around the dojo, which completely messes up your knees and your hips and your back, and actually really serves no purpose other than to kind of add to this kind of, for want of a better term, this toxic male masculinity rubbish. It's not a reason to do it. It's a really important to think about not just emulating someone. If I'm doing chishi and those sort of things, I want to know how it relates to my karate,
Mhm.
rather than just I'm just doing this thing and then kind of going, I am doing this because, and be quite general about the answer. I'm going to go, if I'm doing chishi or if I'm doing kettlebell, how does that then influence my martial arts in a positive way? And if it doesn't, why would I do it? So, and also attitudinally, I mean, I think there's this sort of trend towards, we talk about practical karate, and we talked about, street karate and combat karate. Um, and I think they all have their place, but I also think that I want to do the kind of karate that, like, I'll give an example. I'm always talking. I taught a class last night, and I was talking to my young students about, the importance of focus and listening and all those sorts of things. And this morning, when I was having coffee with my wife, I asked her a question, but in the time between she was thinking about the answer, and I'm asking the question. I picked up my phone and started watching YouTube,
Mm.
and she was talking, and I didn't even hear what she said because I completely lost my focus. So I think that we talk all these big, we use all these big words in the dojo and the dojo kun, but it's really important for me at least to try and embrace some of them and realize that even being a sensei, I'm working on it as well.
Mm.
Like some people think that if you're, some people run to be called sensei. I've had students who can't wait to be black belts and can't wait to be sensei. And I'm going, aside from the literal translation of sensei, you don't, it doesn't affect my kata's not any better because people call me sensei. I haven't suddenly become worldly wise and able to have superpowers because people call me sensei. Um, Sensei to me sometimes is a bit of a burden because I have to be worth that title, but also have to be realistic about what that title means. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the stage that pretty much everybody's going, right? When you're working towards that black belt and the way it is portrayed in the media, oh, you've got the black belt, you're the master. That's a huge
Mm,
misunderstanding as well. So everybody goes through the stage that, oh, yes, I want to be that master, I want to be the sensei. But then gradually you're working harder and harder, and that it start to fading. At least that was for me, and I see that same with my students that, some people are more driven towards it and as a goal, the other ones just hop on the ride and enjoy the kind of side effect of having belts and grades. But that's something that it's got everybody's got a personal journey. But just as like you, I'm kind of subscribing more now towards a longevity in karate and working on
mm,
my mental health and stuff like that. So the aspect, I'm kind of in a weird position here in UK because I'm with a practical karate a lot,
mm,
but I'm not self-defense guy. I'm
mm,
focusing on just enjoying the movement and creating a community. I think that creating community is the one thing that karate can give back to our local communities and have
mm.
that supportive work that it can do. But you are involved with mental health as your regular job, right? If that's correct?
Yes, yes, yes. I've worked predominantly with in the field of family violence, and in particular with the Indigenous men here
Hmm.
in our Indigenous communities, with the Māori and Pacific Island men. And you can't work in that field without understanding that um, mental health and its kind of various subtleties has a lot to do with what happens in terms of externalizing violence. I mean, violence is an interesting thing because violence, there's the external expression of violence, which is I punch you, you punch me, we punch each
Hmm.
other, we both get sore hands, we both get sore heads. But then there's all the violence that is a little more subtle, and it's around the violence we do to ourselves, and that can manifest through addiction,
Hmm.
anxiety, depression, all of those things kind of drink at the same well. And for myself, you know, I for me, I was diagnosed as having a depression. I didn't know what it was. I think I was, gosh, how old was I? I would have been maybe 35. I'm 52 now. So I've had a little bit of time to accustom to it. I'm still doing the work. Um, and how my depression um, tends to externalize as an OCD. I'm quite an anxious person, and I think that the work that you're doing in terms of using martial arts as a metaphor for mental health and well-being. I think for me, from a certain perspective, that's a self-defense that we all should be practicing.
Mm.
It's not a decision we make once to be well, and whatever well is, it's a sort of an ongoing thing. And in terms of you being part of the practical karate community, I mean, I love that when I'm doing bunkai and things like that, or I'm practicing, I want it to be practical. But I think also, in terms of application, I would rather that it has a positive application in terms of my mental health. Like this morning, in preparation for this, I wanted to get a good train on. I was going, right, I'm going to be meeting Bubka Sensei, so I want to be motivated and positive and all these things. So I went out to do some training, got up early, went out to do some training, and I was going, all right, I want something to motivate me while I'm training. So I was scrolling through my phone, looking for a song list. And that took me 25 minutes, where I could have spent 25 minutes training.
Mhm.
But that is, for me, that is really about my anxiousness externalizing.
Mhm.
And so when I'm doing this work, when I'm really lucky to do this work with our men, I'm also doing that work with myself as well. Um, and I think even my reasons for getting into martial arts were really about understanding the trauma that I was going through. I saw violence all around me on a daily basis, and I wanted something that would help me protect um, my family, in particular my mother. I wanted to do something that would help me understand violence. Um, and probably at that age, I wanted to have some sense of power as well. And so I remember a couple of years ago, you may not remember this actually, Sensei, but I put up this post in which I was saying, you know, when students come to my dojo, you know, and they wear t-shirts underneath their gi, I was going, you know, that I don't like that. And, you know, you should be training hard enough that, you know, you don't wear that. And you were very kind in your response. You came back to me and you sort of said, look, in the comments, it says, look, I think you were very kind about it. But that's an example of me learning on the go what's really important. You know, like a lot of times for me, when people were wearing t-shirts underneath their gi, you know, it was a thing where, why is it a problem? I had to think about, why is it a problem for me?
Mhm.
Why am I so fixated on that? People may have reasons for wearing it. I see people wearing rashis underneath their gi all the time. So that was a
Mhm.
good learning for me, just as an example. So um, I think the biggest thing for me with mental health and with martial arts um, is that it's an ongoing journey, and that it's kind of just like training, daily training or regular training. We have to go back. Oh well, I have to go back and do things which help me stay on the path, and that could be me going out and training this morning, and instead of doing 10 sets or whatever it is that I'm doing, okay, look, I'm just going to do 4 and not
Mhm.
spending the rest of the day getting into a negative dialogue about, oh, you're weak, you're useless, you should have done this, you should have done that. Okay, look, I did what I did, and I'm okay with that. You know,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, this is a very very positive thinking, and I'm noticing that with um, Polish people. So the backstory on this, exactly what you just said. We've been under communism, and I'm coming from the lower medium class, so workers, and myself, I've got a couple of friends who are in the same situation. Let's say we are business owners and stuff like that. And if I don't work one day, I've got nothing to do. I feel so guilty because, it
Mm,
was drilled into us. You should work hard every day. And just like, okay, I've been working 5 months really hard. I deserve to sit down and do nothing. But that
mm,
mentality is like, you're beating yourself up about stuff that are really not important, and learning that, giving yourself allowance to do what you are capable of doing in that day or given moment is a very powerful tool to feel better, because then you're
mm,
taking that power away from your criticizing part, and ostracizing yourself that you're useless and stuff like that, instead of looking at it, look how much I achieved, right?
mm, mm. Well, I mean, I think also too, that self dialogue. I know for me, I mean, that's led me, in my life, it's led down the darkest paths. I mean, uh, I've attempted suicide in the past because I got to a place where I was so busy creating this idea of myself for people and trying to look like the guy who had everything together and was always funny and always had a joke and being charismatic and all these things, that I couldn't that idea in my head of you're lazy, you're stupid, you're this, you're that, kind of took off, and it
Mhm.
started, instead of being something was standing way in the back of the room way down the back of the cathedral kind of yelling, it got into the pulpit and started telling me what to do. And, you know, it feels like sometimes with martial arts, you know, where some martial artists, and I include myself in this, I think about what I could do when I was 20,
Mhm.
30, 40. And then I get into this thing where I go, oh, your shikodachi is not what it used to be. Or, there are a lot of techniques I don't use anymore for a
Mhm.
lot of reasons. One, because some of them I can't do anymore. Some of them, they were just stupid to begin with. Like a spinning hook kick. I know some people are amazing at spinning hook kicks. I don't do them anymore
Mhm.
because, to be honest, in my when I've competed in MMA and full contact stuff, like I don't think I ever hit anyone with a spinning kick, but I was more impressed about how I looked doing it, right?
Mhm.
Um, but it's this thing of it's important to think about what we say to ourselves. So I am practicing martial arts as a 52-year-old man, and so I'm my expectations are here and now, and if we let these voices, if we let that negative voice kind of infuse us, it can it can grow in size and strength and power, and it can actually, it can create terrifying consequences. And the way in which we kind of combat it to a certain point, because it's always there. It is always there for me. Is thinking about the people in the community that we create, the people that I want to be around, the people that I want to spend energy on and ask advice from. Um, it's really, really important. And in terms of the dojo, when people come to train with me, I hope that they have um, a good experience and a good physical experience. But more than that, I'm thinking this person has taken time out of their day to come and spend time away from their family, away from their job, away from doing things which were probably way more profitable, and they're giving the energy to something that I want to do. So I have to honor that. And some people may say, "Oh, that's how woke and how airy fairy." But I think we don't live for the most part in a world in which people are going out to hop on battlefields and things like that. The life itself is a battlefield. And so
Mhm.
martial arts is an incredible tool, especially with the work that you do. It's um, it has a real world application in that maybe I will treat myself a little bit kinder. Maybe I'll treat myself as a friend rather than sort of an opponent,
Mhm.
and which is an ongoing kind of a thing. And in our culture, we're encouraged, grind and rise and grind and there is no pain and all these
Mhm.
things. And to be honest, I think it's bullshit. I think that there is pain, and there is the grind hurts, and sometimes we spend all our energy um, doing things that drinking from a bottle that does nothing but make us thirsty.
Mhm.
So it's important to be able to be aware of that. And I think with what you're doing with martial arts, creating mindfulness, look using martial arts as a mindfulness and a mental health practice, for me, that's real karate. That's real
Mhm.
martial arts. That's the point, and that has real world consequences. I'm not thinking about right how many guy comes at me, I'm gonna pick up a bin and throw it at them, and then I'm gonna jab them to the eyes, and I'm gonna pull them in close and headbutt, and then I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking, how do I deal with a job that I'm doing that makes me anxious every day that I do it?
Mhm.
How do I deal with a job in which I'm not really sure what I'm doing, but I have to do it for the money? How do I deal with having difficult conversations with people that I love um, that have needed to be had, but I have been too scared? How do I deal with the ending of a relationship or the starting of one? How do I deal with having a job or not having a job? Or, how do I communicate better with my children?
Mhm.
How do I be someone who can actually say sorry, lead by example rather than kind of, how do I be a good example, but at the same time, encourage them to have their own mind and thoughts about things. That for me is a real challenge. That's where karate or martial arts in general can be such a benefit.
Mm. Yeah, I think that a few things you said very resonate with me as well because I've been anxious as well for a very long time and learning through the work to unlock my own demons and stuff like, I thought that everybody was like that, and then I learned that no, there is people like that, but it's not normal.
Mm,
In a sense that it shouldn't be impacting me so much on it. But I think as men, we don't have a like a manual. People don't
mm,
tell us that you're gonna have that trapped 20-year-old in your head, and you have to deal with it, and that's gonna come sooner or later. And
mm,
this is what you can do, right? You
mm,
accept it, you change your training, and everybody pushes you, I love it when people say age is just a number. No, it's not. Just go into the gym, go to the
yep.
gym at 60. I'm only 45,
Mm,
but I feel
mm,
it already that, it's just it's not the same. And that
mm,
just that silence that 20-year-old in the head, it's very
mm,
difficult job. And I think that people are not men are not educated in that area. I think we don't have a culture of father sitting down with, maybe not everybody, but at least in my case,
mm,
my dad never said to me, oh, you're gonna be getting a bit older and it's gonna be harder. It was just always shut up and go to work and be tough
mm,
and do the job like you meant to do and don't show emotions, right?
mm,
So uh, luckily, I'm surrounded with people that in the martial arts group that we can go and do those seminars and show people that, hey, actually I am vulnerable, I am a person, I've got emotions and I'm not very well sometimes, and it's
mm,
okay. We'll be
mm,
okay. You just try the best, yeah. I don't know how it was
mm,
for you, but when I started working with people with mental health, um, we are all set for a certain expectation, right? We're going on the street, you ask somebody, how are you? The answer is always, I'm fine, it's okay, right? So for me, it was a huge shock to going there for a first session, and we had the people coming in, 10 people, and you talk to them, oh, how are you? Oh, I'm feeling suicidal today. And then
mm,
your response is like, well, but you didn't meant to say that. How do I respond to
mm,
that? And it took me a long time to figure it out that actually I don't need to say anything, but I need to listen. They don't need
mm,
the, oh, it's gonna be okay, because sometimes it's simply just not gonna be okay with people who've got MS or motor
mm,
neuron disease. Like one of my students, it's just not gonna happen, right? How
mm.
did you encounter something like that? What was your struggle point in your job?
I think for me, one of the things was to realize how much these things resonate. Why I was drawn to it. Why I was drawn to that work was because I was really lucky in that when I was a teenager, I had mentors that were very much about healing and all those sorts of things. I also was very lucky in that, um, being Māori, for my culture, a large part of our culture is our language, and our language is very metaphorical. So when it comes to mental health, there's an old saying, and it goes "te pō nui, te pō roa, te pō tango tango," and which is a way of saying it's kind of an address. It's when formal speaking, and what it talks about is, the long night, the dark night, the deepest dark night sort of thing. And for me, that's a metaphor for mental health. When people talk
Mhm.
about mental health is very nuanced. You know, and when people say mental health, they often think, oh, suicidal. But there's all sorts of um, experiential, mental, physical components to that. There are people like, I know for me, understanding the role of serotonin in my
Mhm.
brain and why I feel like the way when I feel when I'm feeling depressed, what's happening. And it's things like understanding that it's not about one size fits all. It's about having to really listen. Listening is a really important part of the work. When a student comes in, and especially if you have these huge dojo that have thousands of students. I don't know I don't know how people teach thousands and thousands of students. I think it's
Mhm.
amazing that they do, and I think a lot of people do it really well. But for me, when if I'm training with someone or I'm training someone, I'm looking at them as an individual and going, how do I wrap the style around who this person is, their physicality, their attitude, and then how do I, how do they articulate the style for who they are? And I think mental health is the same in the sense that, people say, oh, I get exercise and, get plenty of sleep, and all those things are true. But there are so many things, there's so many components to wellness and so many components to being able to do those sorts of things. I mean, for some people, it's music. For some people, it's, spending time by the sea or in the water. So for some people, it's, some people it's being around other people. It's also understanding that there are many different ways of looking at it. Like, I'm not a person who gains energy from being around lots of other people. I'm a person who needs energy to be around lots of other people. If my friends and my family who've been around me after I've taught a big seminar, the worst time for that seminar is afterwards. For me, when I'm sitting by myself, because I'm thinking about all the things I should have said that I didn't say, and I could have done this better, and it's just that sort of thing. And I think that the most surprising thing for me about mental health has been, as you said, especially with men, how we're so terrified to show vulnerability. And that, for me, I think the real strength of manhood is in our vulnerability. The idea that we have to walk around and be these paragons of, I don't know, physical strength and or fortitude and all those sorts of things. I mean, when I talk to my friends, I tell them I love them when I get off the phone. Talking to my friend, one of my closest friends, Bennett, this morning, and we got off the phone. I didn't say, I love you, bro. I said, I love you. And he said, I love you. And we hung up. And it wasn't a need to sort of go, I don't mean it in any kind of gay way, because that's not an issue. The thing is it's not about that sort of insecurity, which is what it is. Being able to apologize when I've done something wrong and being able to move on and let things go has been the biggest challenge. And I think, like you say, for men, if you look at it from a martial arts perspective, I mean, we're constantly putting ourselves, if we're good martial artists, we're constantly putting ourselves in positions where we're not winning. And a friend of mine who's a great sensei here in New Zealand, a guy called Derek English Sensei, fantastic Goju-ryu sensei, fantastic Shunbukan Kobudo practitioner. He was talking, and we were talking about kake one day, and he says, some of the best engagements I had, where I've learned the most, are ones that I haven't come out on top of, And I think the idea of winning and losing, and the idea that somehow we have to dominate and we always have to be in control. There are plenty of times when I am not in control. There are plenty of times when I need support. There are plenty of times when I have to offer support. And I think that it enriches us as martial artists if we have the courage to look at that.
Yeah, I think you're very, very, very right there. And this is what was one of the best feedbacks for my book that I had from readers, that, wow, you you are a strong person, you do martial arts, but you can talk openly about your problems. And I believe it was one of the first books who addressed that for martial artists, that right? I went through the stage where I wouldn't go to the shops, ask for a groceries, right? I didn't want to go into the competition because I'm gonna make fool of myself, so I sabotage myself to not win, right? And it's just, for me, the best thing in description of mental health is that we are on a spectrum, which moves all the time. So you will have moments where you are in a negative. That doesn't mean that you're mentally ill, but you're gonna be depressed. It's how you deal with those and when you bounce, because being hyper happy all the time is not good for you either. It needs to kind of balance it itself, but you're gonna be moving moving through those stages. You just need to recognize where you are, and if somebody member of your family pass away, then it's natural to be in that negative and
mm,
feel that depression and sorrow and everything. But then you can go back with time to kind of middle and hover of it. But it's not that simple that you're ill, you're healthy, right? we
mm,
we all can be in all those sides, and it just to be able to notice that, hey, I'm a little bit too long in depression, like you've been, right?
mm,
That negative voices thing, and actually actively be able to say to your friends, listen, I've got a really shitty time now. I need to talk to you, and then maybe you give me advice if I need to go to a professional. What do you think? How you feel? How would
mm,
you deal with that? And have that be able to have that conversation between your friends, which it seems to be a bit easier for women than men.
mm. Yeah. Well, I think that, for me, I, there's kind of this school of thought, and it's kind of like, you can complain about not being invited about never being invited to a party,
Hmm.
or you can create the kind of party that you'd want to go to.
Hmm.
And I think it's true with our dojo, our life, our training. For me, I think that, and you'll know this from your own podcast experience. There are plenty of people out there who hate what you do, who hate what you
Mm.
talk about, who have an opinion, and will come back and sort of say this and that. And to do a podcast, you have to have some resilience on board, because I know I've gone into some deep spirals of depression over things that people have said and come back on me. And sometimes it's not even really that bad. Sometimes people are just have an honest inquiry and a suggestion. But then
Mhm.
it feeds into my kind of thing of, oh my gosh, I'm a terrible, I should have, it just feeds into that. And I think that, we, you know, if we work hard, create the community, create the dojo you'd want to go to, write the
Mhm.
book. Like, you wrote the book you would read. You
Mhm.
didn't, I would imagine, and I apologize if I get this wrong, Sensei, but I'm assuming you wrote a book that you would read. Not because you wanted to write, you didn't write a book thinking, what will everyone think? And that in itself is a huge step out. Putting yourself out there, your thoughts, your private thoughts, your experiences, that's huge.
Mhm.
And, we get into this sort of thing of, our friends, the people who care about us, are not psychic. And if you can't talk about how you feel, if your relation, like I've got friendships that are based on, when we get together, we mock each other, which is funny.
Yeah.
Amongst friends, it's always friends and family. But if I say, I'm not doing good, I'm feeling really scared, I'm feeling confused, I'm feeling really down, I'm not really sure of myself at the moment, then they have no reference for it.
Mhm.
I've had people who have expected me to be a certain thing, because that's the face I've always shown them. I've always shown them this manufactured, confident, onto it, charismatic fiction.
Mhm.
When I'm not being those things, those people don't know how to act, don't know how to be with me. And the thing is, I understand that, because they're only reacting to what they've seen. But if those people can't be with that, then maybe they're the people that are there for a reason.
Mhm.
Maybe they're there for a season. I'm looking for the friends that are there for the lifetime. And I think that, but people can only react to what they see. We have to, within dojo, there's all kinds of personalities, and people will come to you with all sorts of ideas. People will turn up. I've had people turn up to my dojo who want to train with someone I was 10 years ago.
Mhm.
Who I was 10 years ago, what I did, what I thought, and my thoughts, that was me 10 years ago. I'm not the same person as I was 3 days ago.
Mhm.
Um, and so you have to kind of deal with that expectation as well. I've had people say, "Oh, you know, um, enough with the mental health. Just talk about kicking and punching." And I'm going, well, there's plenty of podcasts you can go and have a listen to that do exactly that.
Mm.
I think that the more we talk about these things, um, the more it becomes commonplace. I don't want to say normal. I hate that, what, I don't know what normal is, but it can be such a, martial arts can be such a healthy outlet and expression and a place of um, safety as well, and it can create so many positive things. But we have to be able to recognize when it's not those things. And in writing your book and in doing the work that you're doing, I mean, it's a really vulnerable place. And to be honest, if you've not experienced anxiety or depression or that inner voice, then you don't know how scary that is. Like
Mm,
I would say that I know for me, every time I do my little podcast, my heart is in my throat when I put it out, because there's part of me that wants people to listen to it, but there's also
hmm
a part of me that's scared that people will. So, it's kind of six of one, half dozen the other, but I like doing it. It's fun. I get to meet people like yourself, and I feel really, really honored and really fortunate to be able to do that. But also, I'd ask you this question, Sensei. I think our martial arts community is filled with some of the most toxic behavior of political toxic behavior of anything, of any activity I've ever seen. There are so many toxic behaviors, and there are so many behaviors that are tolerated because a person has a particular colored belt on.
hmm
And, we have to stand up to that. We have to not be a part of it. Um, there are people that I'm friends with that say, I had, a real close, someone I consider a real close friend of mine say, when you go to this particular, you're going to be around these particular people, and they're not a fan of mine.
hmm
And if they say anything bad about me, just nod your head and go along and go, what kind of friend would I be when I'm your friend? When I regard you a friend, someone I care about now, but when I'm in public, where's my character? That I'm only your friend when it's convenient for me. So at a certain point, we have to say what we believe in, and we have to stick with that, and we have to walk away from toxic people and toxic organizations, and create the kind of community that we want. That's what you're doing, and I'm really keen to do that. I mean, what's your thoughts on that, Sensei, about the toxic behaviors you've no doubt seen?
Yes, I'm gonna answer your question in a second. I just realized that I didn't connect power to my computer and it's going short. So I'm just gonna find the cable,
No worries. I like your
connects.
mic,
But
by the way. That
thank
is a
you.
great mic.
Um, yeah, it was very cheap, but does a very good job.
My,
It was
mine's
like,
Kmart. Mine's a $25 mic.
yeah, mine is about 30 pounds or something like that. But
Yeah.
I'm really, really, really happy with it. Just a second. Yes, so on the toxic behaviors, I walked away through few organization. Okay, that should be nearly working now. Because of that, I can't stand um, politics in martial arts. I'm staying away from it. I've been dragged few times. Um, Not willingly, you just end up in it. And I do totally agree with you. I left several groups in Facebook because I can't deal, not particularly that they're getting at me, because I kind of embrace the trolls and I have fun with them. That's my pastime. I'm practicing my patience, and I have to say that, I'm getting less and less. More I'm
Mm,
nice to the people, they just kind of go away, and I haven't had a troll for about a year now,
mm,
which is kind of odd. I think they're sensing that, I don't care.
mm,
But yes, I lost so much respect for people who I really respected just looking on their interaction on social media and how they write and how they address people. We especially when somebody asking a question, you can see that is a beginner and people jumping on those people like, you should know that. Why don't you ask your sensei? Well, you've got a question, you have to ask somewhere, right? We all been
mm,
there, we all been asking questions, and now we should celebrate that internet gives us ability to ask really high graded people from different organizations having different approaches and different views. As you know, your karate is completely different to mine, but it doesn't stop me to respect you, right? I might not agree with
mm,
you, I might not like what you do, but there's no reason for me to be disrespectful because that's your journey and I've got my own
mm,
journey and I've got plenty of things to do on my karate side
mm,
than spend time on the internet and judge you and write stuff. So So yeah,
mm,
I can't stand the whole notion of a political or just being a rude person. There's no need for that.
mm. I think you know what you say. For me, when you see the social media, the aspect of social media, is you see people treat each other in the worst possible way. I mean, sometimes I think the martial arts community is just people by you know some of the highest level people I've seen
Mm,
seem to be the most dysfunctional. I mean, I'm pretty dysfunctional generally, but I mean, it's like they put their dysfunction out for all the world to see. They treat people in these really terrible ways, and have these battles, these kind of like almost make believe battles. You know, like
mm,
you know, we're talking on things that you know, like you know, one of the things that is kind of like I was in a couple of I got put into a couple of Facebook groups, which I kind of backed away from and just very quietly left because people were getting into these arguments about motobu and funakoshi
yeah.
and the linkages between, you know, like I'm going, I think all that stuff is valid if that is your interest. And there are some fantastic people that have done that work and continue to do that work. Um, but for me, I'm kind of like, that guy's been dead for 100 years.
Mm,
And it's not going to impact my it's not going to impact my ability to do a kata
mm,
or to block a technique. You know, I think that sort of there's almost a nerddom that's kind of grown up around all that sort of stuff, and I think that that's really cool. But I'm seeing the worst behaviors. You know,
mm,
people not crediting their sources. What is it? What is it like? I'll give an example. Like for me, um, um, Hanchi Patrick McCarthy was a big influence on the New Zealand karate scene. He was
mhm,
coming down here in the 80s and the 90s at the request of a lot of sensei, and he was doing two-person drills. You know, and I was a little kid seeing that. And in my training, I was influenced by that. And so I try to do as many two-person drills as I can. It's not the whole training, but a part of it. But it doesn't
mhm,
hurt me to say, this is what I saw.
mhm.
And it's just a kind of respect thing. I mean, this idea that we have to create this original idea, or that I'm not going to show Bubka Sensei that technique because he will steal it. I mean, it's you know we don't own this thing. We don't own this thing. That's okay. You know, wouldn't it be cool? I mean, if I'd had the opportunity to train with you, and I hope I do in the UK sometimes, or you bring your family back to New Zealand,
Mhm.
um, I will be out there with my notebook stealing as much as I can. You know,
Yeah,
and I hope
that
you'll do the same. You
yeah,
know.
that's what the people said. Oh, how did you come up with these things? I said, I did come up with nothing. I just stolen. I see it, I take it, I modify it, whatever I can. I'm just a good thief. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
often say people often say, oh, what's because everybody preaching about the virtues of karate, and the thing is that karate can be helpful but can be harmful. It all depends what sensei you've
Mm,
got or coach or whatever you want to call it. But the karate is like money. It amplifies who you are.
mm,
So if you're a
mm,
bad person and you got more power, power corrupts,
mm,
you're gonna be just worse, right? That's why we see
mm,
so much abuse in martial arts, especially towards kids, right? You just got the power and
mm,
you're abusing it. The same with money, right? More money you've got, it just amplifies who you are inside.
mm. Well, you know, just on that sense, one thing I think one thing that I think is really important, just sort of was just to your point. You know, we're talking about the abuses towards children and young people, young women, young boys. You know, all the stuff that kind of happens. One of the things that we can do about that is we can, like, all my instructors, all the people that I train with, they all have police clearances.
Hmm. Yeah.
And it sounds like a silly thing, but they have, you know, I've seen dojo, you know, we would be stupid to say there hasn't been some, especially here in New Zealand, there hasn't not been some, you know, predatory behavior on the parts of, you know, people in power.
Mm.
Um, and it's not only in martial arts, but you know, I'm talking about martial arts in
Yeah,
particular.
everywhere, yeah.
So what we do is I make sure that if I when children come in when children come and train with me, I always say there needs to be parental supervision, at least one adult
Mm.
aside from myself in the room. And if that's not going to happen, then we don't train. And I don't do
Mm.
that in Ogang because I want to have a good interaction with the students. I want them to feel safe. I want their parents to feel safe. And that's kind of the world that we're kind of living in.
Mm.
But this idea of, these toxic behaviors, I mean, there's so many things going on in the world that are way more important than us getting in our pajamas and punching each other. There were so many things happening in our day going through it. And, I get to get in my PJs and walk up to my dojo and, jump around doing these colorful dances with weapons that I'll never use in a real life situation, but I love it. But you've got to also be open to the ridiculousness of that situation. We're training
Mm.
these techniques we never want to use,
Mm.
to have conflicts we never want to have, and we spend our lives doing it. We're out there punching pads or makiwara or sparring with each other. Then if violence is not what you want, what are you actually getting out of it? What
Mm.
do you actually get out of it? And I would hope that we get a sense of a relationship with ourselves. We talked about it before, Sensei, and that the hardest relationship in our life to have is with ourselves. I spent my young life running from a real relationship with myself, and and I used martial arts and my then physical ability to sort of impress people, but
Mm.
I was pretty much an empty shell inside. And now that I've in my frail dotage, and I'm 52, turned 53 a couple of weeks ago. Oh my gosh.
Happy
Um,
birthday.
uh, yeah, thank you. But the thing is that I, I think I'm not as physically capable as I was when I was 20, but I'd like to think I'm a better martial artist in my
Mm.
50s. I can't do all the things that I did, but I love my training. I love the people that I get to meet. Um, and that's what I'm interested in. That's what I want to spend the rest of my life on. I'm in this phase where I'm trying to figure out what am I going to do, creating the practice that I want to continue for the rest of my life. And I'm planning on living to be 360. So there's time. You know, who
Yeah,
knows?
yeah, it's pretty much same goals for me, lo longevity and enjoyment, right? That's why I keep saying to my students that it's not all about the self-defense sport. You go through that phases, you enjoy them, but you grow out of them, right? And it comes to the stage when you have to start thinking. And I think this is one of the biggest selling points for karate, the longevity, because not many other arts, except I think Kung Fu, got the people who are 90 or 80 and they still enjoying doing karate.
Mm,
It's, like you said, we can do everything we done when we've been younger, but I can still focus on my kata,
mm,
still have some mobility, strength, coordination, and balance because of that training, right? So it's all positive stuff for me. It's
mm,
a self-protection for myself from falling over, breaking stuff, taking care of my bones and,
mm.
and so on. So I think this is one of the biggest selling points of karate.
Yeah, I mean, in Okinawa and Japan and around the world, there are people that continue training because it does something for them. I mean, Okinawa is a blue zone, and that
Mm.
it's got some of the longest lived people in the world. Because of the lifestyle that they lead. And we when we first started this podcast, I was trying to remember that term that my friend in Canada, Steve
Hmm.
Sensei, talks about, and he talks about hobo karate.
Hmm.
He talks about being a hobo, and I guess for me, part of being a hobo is I get to go to lots of different places and see lots of different approaches and lots of different ways of doing things. And part of that is going to places where I'm going, that's not how I want to do it.
Mm.
Everyone is entitled to do it their own way, but I'm going, well, there are some people who their kind of role in my life is to go, yeah, I'm not really keen. That's not really where I want to go. And that's just as important as learning about where you want to go. But your story as a person, we all have our own story. We're all going through a, you know development. And I think martial arts is great for that, in that if we look at martial arts like Yadel, people look at it and of course it's about sword drawing and so on and so forth, but it's a game or an art of subtlety. And people go, well, how do you utilize that in real life? I'm going, well, if you can take your perception and your attention and you can go like this with it and go, well, when I draw the sword, my thumb needs to be in this position and the scabbard needs to be here, and those sorts of things. Or if I'm doing kata and I'm going, right, when I do this technique, I need to do it this way, not this way. You know,
Mhm.
I mean, it seems like silly things, but all of that is an exercise. Now, when I do kata, it's not that impressive. I think when I was younger, there was a lot more snappy. And even the heavyweight gi doesn't help that much anymore. But the thing is I go, right, what am I doing? What am I actually trying to achieve? And your perception changes of what you're doing, and your perception of yourself therefore changes. But the thing is that we are taught that old is, as you get older, you lose your utility and you use your usefulness. For
Mm.
me, I don't know about Polish culture, sensei, but within Polynesian culture, now as you become older, we believe that you know elders are treasures. They're the people who hold the knowledge and the wisdom and the experience. And for me, some of the best experience I've had have been with really senior martial artists that perhaps are not out there standing on one hand doing back somersaults in the middle of their kata, but they're people who have um, the reason I know about Don Drager Sensei is because someone I really looked up to and was lucky enough to spend a little bit of a time with was Sensei. Oh my goodness, it's gone out of me. Oh, Patrick Toner Sensei, who
Mhm.
was his Kyokushin teacher was Masoyama, and
Mhm.
he had photos of him with Masoyama. He was a retired veteran, an expat Englishman who came to New Zealand. He brought his judo was exceptional. His training was amazing. But sitting down and talking to him, talking about, when I used to have a flat with Don Drager, and this person came along, and this person came along, you're going, I learned more in that half an hour conversation than I would have in a year of doing something else. So, you know, every opportunity is an opportunity to learn. We just have to open ourselves to it. And
Yeah.
and now that I'm, you young 40 people in your 40s, you young kids, you wouldn't know. But when you get to 53, you'll learn, young fella.
Mm. It's that whoever I talk to is like, oh, it seems to be jumping every 10 years. So, oh, you just wait till you're gonna be 50, right? You're gonna feel the difference. Then the 60-year-old that says to the 50-year-old, we just destroyed, right? We on a downhill road now. It's it's that deal done, right? But
Mm,
as you said, that sometimes that half an hour with the right teacher is more than 10 years on the floor doing repetition.
mm.
And I
Yeah,
had that plenty of times in my short career in the martial arts, that having that few minutes with the right person can change your perception completely, and put you on a completely different path.
mm. One of the things that I kind of am conscious of, and I look at when I meet new sensei, is how their students and how the people around them react to them,
Mhm.
especially children. I see watch our children. If they have young students, I watch how those students are in class, and I watch how they relate to the sensei. Like I've met sensei where they're treated like gods.
Mm.
Where their every whim is catered to. They will sit down and coffee and a donut will appear in front of them, or like I've something I wasn't aware of until the last couple of years. There was some dojo where the sensei doesn't actually do the warm up with the students. So I saw
Mm.
this thing where one of the other yudancha will warm up the students, and then when the students are sufficiently warm, the sensei will enter the mat. And I'm going, like, for me, I need the warm up. I I need the warm up. Like, some people say, we have a really long warm up. And says, because you're not the one warming up, I am.
Yeah.
But and there's nothing wrong with that. But I also think that how people react in an informal situation to you, if they're your student, that says a lot about a person. And when you see these kind of almost cultish behaviors, that always sends alarm bells
Mm.
to me. I mean, also the thing about telling people you're the strongest or you're the fastest or you're the biggest or you're the best is you keep having to prove it,
Mm.
or you keep having to lie about it. And who needs the stress? Who needs the stress? I mean, you know, martial arts should be about reality. We talk about reality, martial arts. Well, reality is that, like you said, my reality is 53. Your
Mm.
reality is 45. That you know, and it's but we live in a time when people are so influenced and so looking for the truth of themselves.
Mm.
And I think one of the strengths in doing what you're doing is that you're encouraging people to look deeper in. You know, you look at themselves in a way where they're looking for answers to questions instead of asking anyone who's walking down the street. They start asking these questions to themselves. And with martial arts, you can get quiet enough with yourself that you can come up with some really great answers.
Mm. Yeah, on that note of a behavior in a dojo, I've got a couple of students coming from different. Most of my students are kind of group of people who came from different organization, different styles, looking for something different because I'm kind of from a
Mm,
modern style of Kyokushin. We do quite of things differently,
mm,
and we've got a like very friendly atmosphere and stuff. And we've been sparring, and
mm,
particularly one girl, she punched me and then she started withdrawing and running away. I said, "Well, what you doing? I congratulate you because oh no, you're gonna punch me now." I said, what do you mean? My job here is to make you better. So if it's harder for me to spar with you
mm,
because you're getting those shots, that means I'm doing a
mm,
great job. So I just congratulate you. Oh no, but my old sensei, every time I hit
mm,
him, he chased me and make sure that I've been punished for that. And you know, there's no need for that, right? My
mm.
job is to make you better, right? That's what you're paying me for. So,
I had a I had since I had a very similar but I didn't handle it as well as you did. So we were doing round robin sparring, right, with a group of students, and probably, these were young guns in their 20s, all of them black belts, and one of them gave me a rip to the body.
Mhm.
When you get hit with a really good shot, and I honestly felt like vomiting. I wasn't winded, but he just hit me with a beautiful shot. I felt like lying on the floor and putting a blanket over myself and just going to sleep. It was such a good shot. But I remember, I remember going, "Okay, yeah, man, okay, rotate," and I'm just sitting there going, "You guys have a break," you know. And I just remember it was just a perfect shot. And I remember my ego wouldn't allow anyone to see that I have was really hurt.
Mm.
It just got hit really, really hard. And so I'm just trying to, so that in itself, like your kind of maturity and saying, hey, that's a really good thing, and it's okay, let's just continue. And my
Mm.
lack of maturity in trying to, be down with the young people, that was a good lesson. And so I try to adopt your attitude of
Mm.
it now. But yeah, there's still every now and then my desire to be cool and look good and be 25 kind of jumps out at me, and I usually end up paying the price,
Yeah,
in
yeah.
one way or another.
It's very difficult to contain that guy in the head. Yeah, with
Mm,
me praising people, we've got the footage. We went for a competition 2 years ago. So I was 43, and my
mm,
student who is training longer than me, he's 62 now, and we end up being in a
mm.
final. And we're sparring there. Obviously, we decided that we're gonna have it just like a dojo sparring during a competition.
Yeah.
And he's throwing me, and mid flight, you say, "Oh, that's a great one." It's all recorded, like, good one, well, well done for you. And he says to me, "You shouldn't do that in a competition, you know." But but you're just happy that
Yeah.
people are performing really, really well. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things which is really like, when I've got a small group of young Q grades that I train, kids, and so okay, we're going to warm up now. and all of them will drop into the splits without any kind of warm up.
Mm.
I can't do the splits. I could never do the splits. And for a 53-year-old man, I'm probably pretty flexible. But for
Mm.
a 12-year-old, I might as well be a boulder.
Yeah.
And so it's like, Sensei, why can't you do the splits? I'm going, because I'm not a rubber band. So it's working within your own expectations as well, and it's that sort of, the idea that we don't have to, you know, dominating other people is, I mean, if that's how you, the metric you place on your value,
Mhm.
there's always someone bigger, there's always someone better, there's always someone faster, younger, and more hungry. And I remember one sentence they said, if you train hard and you understand what you're doing, you'll never meet that person.
Mhm.
But if you think they don't exist, one day they'll knock on your door and it won't be a pleasant experience.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we've also got to keep remembering, most people who don't do martial arts think we're crazy.
Yep.
Why would you do that? Why would you spend your time doing that? And to be honest, if loving martial arts makes me crazy, then I'll be crazy all day.
Yeah.
I don't mind at
I,
all.
I,
I
I
don't mind at
always,
all.
always, always say to my students that, there's no single normal person in his dojo. It's all life, all day long with
Mm.
of crazy people. But it's a good crazy.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I like my crazy. I think also too, you know, um, uh, that it's all right to embrace. People. It's very kind of, people say it all the time, to embrace your inner child. Like I'm,
Mm.
you know, I'm not really interested in being like. For me, I'm 6'4", and when I walk around, if I don't have an expression on my face, sometimes people can misapprehend my expression. I don't think I have a resting bitch face. I think I have a resting dumb face. And people think that, like I've had people say to me, you don't talk like I thought you would talk. or you look so scary until you
Mm.
started talking. And like, if I'm walking down the street and I don't have these, what you take as me being scary is me squinting to see who you are. Do you know what I mean? So sometimes, it's not getting caught up in worrying about how other people perceive us.
Mm. For me, it become a bit of a brand now. So people asking me for my Polish smile, because as Polish people, we don't have enough muscles, so we cannot smile properly. So, but so I always look, especially with the light like that, will make me completely yellow. I look pale, grumpy, and I am
Yeah.
getting grumpy old man anyway. But it's to the degree that, I'm married with my wife happily for 13 years, and still when
Mm.
I'm reading something or thinking about something in the bed, she comes in, "Did I upset you?" No, it's just my thinking phase. I'm focused now, so very angry and grumpy. So
Yeah.
I think that's just,
Well, I
the
mean,
way it is.
I think it's also being able to take advice. I know from my partner, she goes, it's like having a wife who kind of brings you back down to earth.
Mm,
Sometimes, like you're talking about grumpy, I find myself so opinionated and so grumpy, and she will just say something, and I will just go, "Oh, that's right, I'm being an idiot."
mm,
So, so martial arts, it's like, um, martial arts is supposed to cure all these things that it's plagued with, right? Um, and we're human, and being human is, we're full of all sorts of, glitches and errors, and
mm,
you know misspelling words, and all these sort of things. But we can kind of embrace that. And um like doing this podcast, I mean, anxious black belt podcast, I mean, what does that tell you right from the start? I mean, I'll give you an example, Sensei. For me, with anxious black belt, is almost the exact same reason why I started the Invisible Sensei podcast.
mm,
So Invisible Sensei was because I was scared to put myself out there. So I thought, I'm just going to start a podcast and not talk about myself or let myself be
mm,
seen. It's only in the last couple of years where I've actually started, like in my podcast intro, I say my name because
Mhm.
before I was too embarrassed to do it. With your podcast, I mean, you started from the beginning, just being yourself, and I really applaud that. I think that in the
I feel
podcasting community,
I think that's just a illusion. It's not. It takes me a
mm,
long time to get comfortable with it because the whole podcast is
mm,
as a challenge to myself.
mm,
And I was looking different, with trying different things and emulate few people, and it took me good few episodes to actually come out and try to be myself. And
mm.
I can't do much about it, so better be, everybody else is taken, so I'm gonna be myself. But I
Well,
had a
women
few
with,
people.
oh, sorry, Sensei, please, I
Yeah,
interrupted you.
I had a few people commenting that, oh, this is rubbish title. You should have like a super black belt or tough black belt and stuff like that. I said, well, it's my podcast. I can do whatever I want. That's how I feel,
Yeah,
and that's what it is.
yeah, yeah. Well, like I applaud. You know, creating a podcast is not an easy thing. It takes up time. When we're not, I don't know about you, Sensei, but I would imagine neither of us are making millions of dollars.
No.
Like we do it because we enjoy it, but also, um, like in martial arts, you start out and you try to sound like other people. You go, I like
Mm,
how they do it. I like how they do it. So you try and it takes a while, to do kata like yourself.
mm,
We're going, I want to do kata like this sensei or that sensei, and that's natural. But podcasting is, yeah, it's its own thing. It's it can be really scary at times. Um, and it always amazes me when I get asked to be on other people's podcasts because it's such a compliment. You know,
mm,
you like to know I'm kind of doing something other people resonate with. Um, and it's it, people don't realize what goes into it, Sensei.
mm.
If you're watching this, see these microphones we're talking into. You know, I don't know. I won't say anything for Bubka Sensei, but for me, this is a $25 podcast microphone from Kmart. Um, and like I spend hours and hours and hours, much like yourself, thinking about what I'm going to say and then editing it, and
Mm,
you hope that people like it. And it's a scary, scary process. And anyone who's out there doing it, I've got friends who are doing other podcasts and things like that. It's a scary thing to do, but if you're listening and you've got something to say, add something to the conversation. No, it's so important. I mean, like I say, Sensei, I just love the fact that you're putting um, mental health out there. Your podcast is not about mental health, and your karate is not just about
mm,
mental health, but the fact that it's a component of it, I think is really brave, and I will do my best to emulate that in my own training as well.
Thank you. Um, what's the future holds for you, Tori Sensei? Um,
Oh, Sensei, I'll tell you what. How about this? You call me two. Like when people call me Sensei, it always feels odd. Uh,
mm,
so um, my immediate future is that I'm going to go to the kitchen and find something to eat because I was so nervous about doing this podcast that I'm going to make myself some breakfast. Um, and then my wife will go, "Can you make me a coffee?" And I'll go, "Yes, I'll make you a coffee." And then she'll go, "Well, while you're up, can you make me some toast?" And I go, "Yes, I'll make some toast." And she goes, "You couldn't do me a omelet or something, could you?" And that's what's in my immediate future. But in terms of what I, in terms of training and so on, since I'd like to do this, I'd like to do the Invisible Sensei abroad. I'd like to travel back to the UK and to the States, and I'm due to be in Okinawa again later in the year. And I'd love to come and train with yourself and other martial artists and just have a really good time doing it. Drink some coffee together, have
mhm.
some food, do some good training, debate, disagree, but just keep talking. And I think um, I'd like to back myself more. So that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm taking from our podcast this morning. I'm going to believe in myself a bit more and put myself out there a bit more because I actually, contrary to what I think, I might actually be enough. So I'm going
Mm,
to do that, and I'm going to work hard to stay in contact because I have so enjoyed this conversation and meeting you, Sensei. I mean, I feel like I'm talking to an old friend, and yet we've just literally met. I'm hoping you'll come to New Zealand, Sensei. You know, you've got a place, come down. If you have any students coming through, give them a yell, tell them they've got a place. But thank you for having me on the podcast, Sensei. I feel like I've had, it's been a real privilege to be something which I think is a real positive part and hopefully an enduring part of our martial arts community. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. It's always when people say such nice things, it's like very odd. I kind of wanna hide. So it was a pleasure.
Yep, I understand.
The feeling is very mutual. I have to say I was a bit apprehensive because, as you know, we look at other people's podcasts and I'm thinking, wow, he's doing such a great job, and who am I to reaching out and getting people out? So I was apprehensive as well with chatting with you and how it's gonna go and how the interaction gonna be. But yeah, like you said, it's like catching up with an old long not seen friend. So thank you very much,
Yeah.
and I will be putting your links to share to your podcast as well, so people can reach out and listen to Invisible Sensei as well.
Well, well, well. Likewise, if you're going to be listening, look, if you're listening to Invisible Sensei, you better have listened to the Anxious Black Belt podcast first, because I tell you, when I listen to it, I always walk away with something really positive. And I hope if you're listening to this or watching this, that you will too. We need to do all we can to support the work that Bubka Sensei is doing, and you do that by subscribing, you do that by listening, and you do that by dropping comments and sharing the podcast. And I will do my part in that, Sensei, with the promise that we'll actually get to train together soon and have a meal together.
Yeah, it'll be lovely. You always can stay with us if you're in the UK, and you're always welcome to ours. Okay,
How big is your refrigerator, Sensei?
I got two.
Oh,
Right. Thank you very much, and I catch you up soon.
hey, no, thank you. Yeah.